Well, shalom, this is Todd Bennett coming to you from under the Succa in Jerusalem, Israel. And I'm sitting in my Sukkah, and this is day 5 of the festival of Succot. And in the last few episodes, we talked about Jacob's journey to Succot and his transformation from Jacob to Yisrael at Bethel. And now we'll discuss a different place called Succot involving the children of Yisrael. Now this Succot was not the same Succot as that Jacob passed through. The Succot that we're going to talk about today is the one that marked the culmination of the covenant promise given to Abram while he was on his journey out of Babylon and into the promised land. Here's that covenant promise given in Genesis 15:12 through 16. It says, "Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge afterward. They shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age, but in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." Now, remember that Abram was uncircumcised. He'd just come out of Babylon and believed the promise of Elohim, and here he was given this promise in an uncircumcised condition. And this uncircumcised state was a representation of the nations. In fact, that was part of the promise made to Abram before he left Babylon, and we read about that in Genesis 12:1. It says, "Now Yahweh had said to Abram, Get out of your country, from your family, from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So this covenant is not just about his family, but it's the entire earth. All the peoples, all the goyim of the world would be blessed. And the deliverance and the covenant promise would be accomplished through the servant Moses. And Moses was sent to warn Pharaoh and prepare the children of Israel for the fulfillment of that covenant and the deliverance that would occur through the Passover and unleavened bread. And we read about their journey to Succot after the Passover in Exodus 12, beginning at 31. It says, "Then he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, Rise, go up from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go serve Yahweh as you have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also." And the Egyptians urged the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. For they said, "We shall all be dead." So the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their kneading bowls bound up in their clothes on the shoulders. Now the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moses, and they had asked from the Egyptians articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing. And Yahweh had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they granted them what they requested. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. Then the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succot, about 600,000 men on foot besides children. A mixed multitude went up with them also, and flocks and herds, a great deal of livestock. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were driven out of Egypt, and could not wait, nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. Now the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, on that very same day, it came to pass that all the armies of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night of solemn observance to Yahuwah for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is that night of Yahuwah, a solemn observance for all the children of Israel throughout their generations. And Yahuwah said to Moshe and Aaron, "This is the ordinance of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat it, but every man's servant who is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then he may eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant shall not eat it. In one house it shall be eaten. You shall not carry any of the flesh outside the house, nor shall you break one of its bones. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it, and when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover to Yahweh, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as a native of the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it. 1 Torah shall be for the native born and for the strangers who dwell among you. Now notice the very brief mention of Succot in this passage. You barely notice it in the midst of all the action that's occurring. The Passover has just finished and the 10 plagues were completed. The children of Yisrael received favor and they plundered the Egyptians. They're leaving Egypt actually like an army, it calls them. And they left with a mixed multitude representing the nations. And this was a fulfillment of the pattern established by Abram when he received favor from Yahweh. Pharaoh was plagued and Abram left with great wealth, along with Hagar, which literally means Hagar the stranger. Now this deliverance of Yisrael from Egypt occurred on the same day that the 400-year period told to Abram was completed. Now we focused on how Sukkot is a feast involving the nations, and the mention of Sukkot in this passage clearly confirms that fact. In fact, this is why the inclusion of the foreigner is specifically mentioned. Read in Exodus 12:48, and when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover to Yahweh, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as a native of the lands. In other words, so once he's circumcised, he's to be treated just as a native. For no uncircumcised person shall eat of it. 1 Torah shall be for the native born and for the stranger who dwells among you. Now, many times Jewish people will tell Gentiles or people that they believe are Gentiles that they can't keep the Torah. And this is absolutely a false statement. It's opposed to the Torah and the plan of Yahweh set forth through Sukkot. In fact, that's essentially what Shimon and Levi thought when they told the men of Shechem to get circumcised so that they could then kill them. They never intended for them to be included in the covenant, although that was the intention of the men of Shechem. So here we see the children of Israel under the guidance of Moses following in the pattern of Abram. They included the foreigner and the stranger with them. The Torah is for everyone, and there is only 1 Torah. There's not an oral Torah for the Jews or 7 Noahide laws for Gentiles. There's 1 Torah for all. And he wants all of the sons of Adam and all the sons of Noah to follow his Torah. And that's what Yahweh intended, and this is why we see Israel being brought out of bondage with the mixed multitude, and their first stop is Sukkot. Jacob, after being renamed Yisrael, came from the east to Sukkot, and now the children of Israel would be coming from the west to Sukkot with the nations, as they were being delivered from slavery after Passover. They went directly from unleavened bread to Sukkot. And amazingly, these 2 feasts are both 7-day feasts. Unleavened bread begins on day 15 of month 1. Sukkot begins on day 15 of month 7. They're exactly 7 months apart, and they parallel one another. Now, when Yisrael left Ramses for Sukkot, it was still a place. It wasn't specifically a commanded appointed time for them, but the connection between unleavened bread and Sukkot is abundantly clear in this passage, and it's an important waypoint on the way to Bethel. In this case, the children of Israel left Sukkot and proceeded to Mount Sinai for a wedding, and as with Bethel, Mount Sinai was like a gate of heaven. Essentially, the heavenly Mount Zion sat on top of Mount Sinai as Yahweh came in a thick cloud and spoke to the children of Israel. Some believe that a portal actually opened up and allowed them to ascend directly to the throne room where they saw Elohim. And we see this allusion to this in Exodus 24:9-11. It says, "Then Moses went up, also Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Yisrael, and they saw the Elohim of Yisrael. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone. And it was like the very heavens in its clarity. But on the nobles of the children of Yisrael, he did not lay his hand. So they saw Elohim, and they ate and they drank." This was very similar to what happened to Jacob. He saw Elohim, and he lived. And here we see now the elders and Moses and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu, they literally went up to the throne room and they saw Elohim and they lived. Sadly, after leaving Succot, the children of Yisrael ended up falling into idolatry, just like Jacob's family did. They made idols and they worshiped them, and they broke the covenant. Moses then cut new tablets, and Yahweh renewed the covenant on those tablets. Moses then brought those new tablets down to the people with the renewed covenant on Yom Kippur, which is day 10 of month 7, only 5 days before Sukkot. When he came down, he immediately started plans for the construction of the Succah of Yahweh, called the tabernacle. Things would be different than originally planned, though, because of their idolatry with the golden calf. The Levites would now represent the firstborn of Yisrael. Although Yah would dwell in the midst of Yisrael, there would be a separation between Yahweh and the people. So, as we celebrate Sukkot and dwell in these temporary structures, it's a reminder of the separation that still exists between Yahweh and his people. And we long for the day when we no longer celebrate this feast, when we can leave our sukkahs and dwell in the house of Elohim. And that's what we have Yeshua the Messiah to be thankful for, because that's what he will accomplish. And we're going to talk about that in the next episode. For now, my name is Todd Bennett from Under the Sukkah in Jerusalem. Shalom.